Alright, so we're continuing our look at how the Grrmverse and Marvel and the MCU link up. So let's get into it. First off is Drogo again. Now I noted that Drogo and Conan the Barbarian have a huge resemblance, but properly speaking, Marvel didn't create Conan. They do own Conan as a copyright and trademark, but they didn't create the character. But they did create a very similar character called Ka-Zar, who resides in the Savage Land, and if you notice his muscularity and his build and the way he works, he's very similar to Drogo. There's also obviously some resemblance to the wildlings because Ka-Zar belongs to a very primitive people, so they still rely upon, hand-to-hand combat. He also has a saber-toothed tiger for a companion, and it sort of mirrors or parallels how the Starks work with the direwolf, right? The direwolf is always sort of right there beside them, sort of as a protector, but also to attack enemies. And then we turn to Arya. I noted that there was a resemblance between Arya and Daredevil, but there's also a resemblance with how the Faceless Men are training her and transforming her, and Psylocke in the X-Men comics. Now there's obviously some huge differences. Psylocke began as a British woman and she was transformed into an Asian woman by a secret organization called The Hand. But The Hand and the Faceless Men are very close in that, they rely upon martial arts, they're very secretive, and they take and kidnap people and transform them. Now, obviously, I don't think Arya is going to be transformed into another ethnicity, but there's a very similar process in the way they're kind of transforming her as a young woman into something else for their own purposes, though at this point, we are not quite clear what they're up to, but if you've seen the TV version, they do want to train her to be an assassin, which is what they did with Psylocke, although at this point, we don't know if Arya is going to be given extra powers like Psylocke was in the comics. And then we have Illyana, or Magic. If you've seen the New Mutants film, she's actually there. I don't know if they used the classical version of the character, but Illyana, her classical version, actually has a big flaming sword, which should be familiar. That's sort of a lot like Beric with the Brothers Without Banners. Now, obviously, there's some differences. Beric's almost completely magical, right? Whereas Illyana is a mutant, but again, Illyana is a little weird. There's kind of a mixture of magic and mutation in her powers. So it's a nice little visual parallel between the two characters. Now this one's a little bit more rock solid. We have Prince Namor of the Martell House, and that should tell you that's very close to Prince Namor, the Submariner in the Marvel Comics. We haven't seen too much of Namor and other visual media, but he's there if you know where to look for him. Now this is pretty obviously almost a one-to-one case. Obviously Namor does not have superhuman powers, but yeah, you can tell that there's almost zero difference in terms of where the characters are named. Namor and Namor, it's very small. And now we turn to Jon Snow. Now it's kind of a myth that the Marvel Universe doesn't have sword-wielding characters. They're just not used that much, but there are plenty of them. Taskmaster, Baron Zemo, a few others. The Black Knight with the Avengers, Shatterstar with the X-Men. But I think probably the most relevant sword-wielding character, or at least hand-to-hand combat fighting character, is Moon Knight. I don't want to spoil too much with Moon Knight, but essentially he dies and resurrects himself, and he thinks God has brought him back from the dead, and he used to be an assassin. Now, again, it's slightly different from Jon Snow. I mean, obviously, the people at the Wall are more of an honorable brotherhood than Moon Knight, right? He was a mercenary. But I think we mostly know that Jon Snow's probably going to be resurrected, and it seems like it'll have a very similar story to Moon Knight, where he may pick up a new religion and a new way of looking at the world. And finally, we have Bloodraven, who, again, there's a lot of contestation on how to describe Bloodraven. I'm just going to go with my interpretation, is that he can do time travel. Obviously, the kind of time travel is a little weird. And to me, visually as well as thematically, he looks very close to Cable. Obviously, there's some differences. Cable is much bigger, more muscular, and Bloodraven's very thin. But Cable also is this very mysterious kind of mentor figure who can time travel. He also has very strong psychic powers. He's actually the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, so he has a lot of psychic abilities. But he time travels and fights people in very different eras. Now again, Bloodraven is less physical, but there's a very strong thematic parallel between these two. Alright, I have a few more, but I just wanted to cover huge ground in terms of the Marvel characters and Grrmverse overall. I'm going to start doing more in-depth profiles to prove my case with each one. Alright, this has been the Grrmverse and Marvel and MCU connections. GRRM Thrones Analyzed. If you like the content, please hit the like button and or subscribe. Please comment below. Please share the content if you can. Thanks for